Hello, my name is Hassan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, Shorts. There's no co-host on these Shorts episodes. These are now around 6 to 8 minute long observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and yes, even the theology of leadership. Because listening to me talk or rant for about the next 6 to 8 minutes about leadership is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that one that you listened to that now sounds like an AI recording, and it's not the real author. What a brave new world we live in. Engaging in the behavior of worship in cults, either of personality or of youth, doesn't yield optimal results for leadership in the long term. A lot of this modern cult-like worship behavior has its roots, as does much behavior in our contemporary culture, in the post-World War II baby boomer era. The drumbeat of quote-unquote not trusting those with age and wisdom began then, slowly and insidiously, with the Beat generation of the 1950s, as a psychological and cultural reaction to the existential fears and threats of the Cold War. The West reached the apex culturally of disbelieving those with years and experience in the 1960s and 1970s, in America at least, with the military failures of the Vietnam War and the roiling youth-led movements focused around civil rights and civil disturbance. And of course, America reached the apotheosis of such belief in the political culture with the media takedown of President Richard Nixon in the middle of the 1970s. Fortunately, however, at all levels, there were still leaders, managers, and even dutiful followers who, in business, education, media, and entertainment, who were still behaving in responsible and accountable ways, and who were willing to fall on their swords when events, projects, and missions went sideways, as events, cultures, and missions and projects often do. Culture marches on inexorably, however, through people's individual lived behaviors, and the message had gone out broadly, but hadn't yet fully penetrated the persistent substrate of the World War II generation's insistence on competency, responsibility, power, and control. However, starting in the mid-1990s, there began to be more obvious celebrations of youth and the behaviors of youth in overall American culture, most notably in the areas of technology and finance. And thus began the publication of the lists. You know the ones I'm talking about. 40 under 40, 30 under 30, and I've even gotten emails lately for 50 under 50. And now, 20 years into our brave new millennia in the West, the drumbeat of culture is, quote-unquote, hand power and control over to those under 40 because they possess youth and energy and sort of a preternatural knowledge that the old fail to possess. Of course, there's an extra side benefit to that the youth under 40 typically have giant egos. They typically lack knowledge about the value of their experience in the market, and thus can be paid and will accept pretty much anything. If you were an alien who wanted to create a toxic mixture for leadership failures in a nation-state culture, such as we see exhibited in the behavior of a Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX, an Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos, a Travis Kalanick of Uber, or an Adam Newman of WeWorks, well, you couldn't have created a better mix, guaranteed to produce toxicity, mistrust, and inexperienced mismanagement. So for leaders, what is the lesson out of all of this history and culture that I've just given you? Well, for leaders, the lesson here is that the idea that there aren't any more adults in the room has historical and cultural basis, and that basis is undeniable. We've got to acknowledge it and wrap our arms around it beyond just quietly. Leaders, you cannot ignore the culture around you that you live in and that your followers live in. It's just too powerful a mover. For followers, the lesson here is that leaders come with feet of clay and will always fail. In the past, when we in the West, leaders and followers alike, had more of a tragic view of humanity and weren't surprised by people behaving in the ways that people naturally behave, followers who were adults and had the mindset of adults were able to guide others past the cynicism, hopelessness, and nihilism that such human failures tend to engender in the young. Followers must change their focus of worship from people to entities that are significantly more transcendent. Ultimately, though, all of us, every single one of us, those listening and those watching, hearing my words and following this podcast, ultimately, though, all of us have a responsibility to reject the power of cults, of either personality or of youth, to point out to the blind among us that they are worshiping the wrong people or things, and to behave as accountable, responsible people in a complicated world where hiding from accountability has become ridiculously easy, and standing up for responsibility or with responsibility has bigger prices than it ever has had and bigger costs than it ever has had before. But you will be rewarded, if not on this side of the veil, potentially on the other. And well, that's it for me. Listen and subscribe to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast on all the major podcast players that you listen to podcasts on, including iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and even Spotify. And please leave a 5-star review if you like the show. We need those reviews to grow, and it's the easiest way to make sure that this show gets into the ears of the leaders who need to hear it. And of course, tell all your friends. If you want to get started on the leadership path, HSCT Publishing's products and services can help your team do that. Check out our training webinars, coaching services, and more at leadershiptoolbox.us. We also have a video-based subscription service, that's software as a service, that can help your team become better at the individual level. 60 modules and over 100 hours of video and written content for you at LeadingKeys.com. That's LeadingKeys.com. We've also got books that will help you and your team grow. Pick up a copy today of My Boss Doesn't Care, 100 essays on disrupting your workplace by disrupting your boss, and subscribe to the Little Red podcast I launched earlier this year with the same name as that Little Red book. My most recent book is 12 Rules for Leaders, the Foundation of Intentional Leadership, co-written with contributions from Bradley Madigan. This is the book for right now that was written for leaders right now. Pick up a copy by heading over to 12rulesleadersbook.com/now. That's 12rulesleadersbook.com/now. You pay for shipping, and you'll get a copy of my second book as well. Finally, you can get all these books in paperback, hardcover, or as ebooks on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and any other place online you order books. Finally, HSCT Publishing is on YouTube. Like and subscribe to the video version of the Leadership Lessons for the Great Books podcast on the HSCT Publishing channel on YouTube. Just search for HSCT Publishing and hit the subscribe button. You'll get our weekly video updates, which is the video version of this podcast. And, of course, you're going to want to subscribe to my other podcast. That's right, I do more than one. The Hasan Sorrells Presents audio experience, where I talk more casually with a broader range of people about all matters that matter in the world today, from arts all the way to analytics. All right, that's it for me.